Hey guys, Steve here. Today we got to look at the Tier 3 Russian destroyer, the Izyaslav. Gurn on the screen. You'll note we have no concealment on there. Madden helps the traverse. Burke helps the accuracy, especially at long range. That should give you a clue as to how we're going to be running these. I think Trubetskoy, or whatever his name is, probably just call him Trubes. I think he's probably the build I'm going to go with. Increases the range. Has a bit more of an HE-centric build, more focus on the guns, and I think that's the way to go. Gurn I've had him since the game basically came out. He came with the Gremyashi in the Founders Edition. A lot of people got the Gremyashi at Christmas time, or the Adhoknik recently, about a month ago, give or take. And so we got some points into him, so I'm going to run him until we're finished with the cruiser build, and then we'll start putting some points into troops. But a lot of feedback on these I'm getting from people. They're difficult, they suck, and they usually immediately thereafter cite the torp range. The torp range on this one isn't actually that bad. It's 5 kilometers, but compared to the base detection 6.1, even if we ran a double concealment build, we're going to have trouble really effectively stealth torping these ships out there. So destroyers, you have a spectrum. You have the Japanese on the far end, the torpedo boats, the pure stealthy builds, and then you have, as we go through the spectrum, you got the Brits, you got the Germans kind of in the middle. Then previously we had the Americans on the far end. These are even further more on the gunboat end of the spectrum than the Americans. And so if you're trying to run these as torpedo boats, you can maybe get away with it in these Tier 3 games when the battleships are sailing in straight lines, looking down their scopes, and playing like complete noobs. But I'm recommending that you get some good habits instilled in you early on. If you get these early Russians unlocked through the crates, just try and play them like you should be playing the line, and get in the habit early. I picked this game for a number of reasons. We got a lot of HE, we got some AP, and we have what I would consider a proper torp run in these ships. So kind of keep an eye on what we're shooting and the different situations. Here we got a broadside cruiser, and we do have AP loaded here. Now Gurn has 2 perks to enhance the AP pen, so the effectiveness of these shells are going to be better on this build than the troops build. But you can see even with the double AP pen build here, we're attempting to aim up more on this ship here. I still don't have a great read on these Tier 2, Tier 3 Soviet cruiser armor schemes. They seem to present a little bit of trouble for cruisers, destroyers. But by aiming up, we're going to be hitting it in the least armored parts of the ships at least. And fairly effective on this target here. So what you got to do is keep an eye on the indicators that pop up. The leftmost one is a penetration that detonates internally. That's what you want to be getting. If you're not getting those consistently with the AP shells, switch over to the HE. We got some destroyers pushing into our base, so we're moving that direction. Now, previously I've kind of said I don't think the Soviet destroyers are going to be very good at dealing with other destroyers. I'm starting to rethink that a little bit here. The caveat is they're good at range. You want to be keeping everything at range in these and shooting your guns kind of at max range here. But compared to the enemy destroyers, they're going to have slower shells, which make them harder to hit. You have very flat, high velocity gun arcs. You can see they're reminiscent of those cruisers, very accurate guns. So we do have the advantage against these things as long as we keep them at range. Once you get in closer, they're going to have better turret traverse, and the advantages start to swing towards the other end of the spectrum. So we want to keep these at range, but here you can see, even though these little Valkyries, I think those are Tier 2 British destroyers, we're kind of able to outgun them, and that's, again, due to the characteristics. So keep them at range, deal with the destroyers that way. You don't want to push in like a USN destroyer and use that turret traverse and quick reload and do rings around them that way. Keep them at range, and that's how you want to play them. I'm also kind of adjusting my thinking on these. They're kind of like a tanking role almost. Not like battleships when played properly. You want the enemy to shoot at you. You want to be angled and protect yourself so you're not absorbing a lot of damage per salvo, but you do want to have a lot of salvos directed your way. That way they're not shooting at your cruisers, they're not shooting at your destroyers. Here, if we're staying at range and we're using our speed and maneuverability to dodge what are typically slower shots incoming our way, we can also get those battleships to waste their salvos. Potentially, we can get some cruisers to miss, and we're, in effect, kind of tanking that way just by using a different philosophy. So those are two kind of unique characteristics of this destroyer line that once you can kind of mentally incorporate those, then you'll start to have a little bit more success here. And again, once we get that destroyer popping up, we're going to be able to shoot him pretty well. He speeds up there, so we missed that one. But other than that, again, a hard destroyer to hit, but we're not really having any issues, whereas his return fire our way is much less accurate. So don't feel afraid to fight these destroyers. Just do it in the Soviet or the Russian destroyer playstyle. Up next, we got a sequence. This is what I would recommend torping. We're going to try and use ambush torps with these short-range torps. We're going to identify that we have an island here. We got a battleship that's getting close to it. So we're going to cut basically directly at that island, get as close to him as possible. Unfortunately, our friendly battleship to the left off the screen, he's almost dead. So what does he do? He pushes in fully broadside. That's probably a good play. Oh wait, no, that's not a good play. But regardless, this is how I think you need to be torping with these things. Yes, again, with the tier 3, potentially tier 4, you're going to have a lot of moon-eyed new players who don't know what they're doing. But this is kind of, as we go up the tiers, these are going to be the situations. We got a lot of health here, which is built in, so that's good. Do have 3 torp launchers on here, so we launch one on the indicator. We can see he's turning in, so he's taking some basic maneuvers. We angle one over to the right to account for that, and then we actually hold on to the 3rd salvo just in case he's able to dodge. And the 3 salvos here gives you a lot of maneuver flexibility when it comes to that. Our teammate kills him, not an issue. He's dead either way. But had we not had support, we would have gotten around to the other side. We want to torp him in the broadside, and so we were holding the salvo for that. And when you get in tight on those battleships, their turret traverse has no chance of keeping up with you. So once you get in close, you're only really worried about the secondaries. Secondaries not really much of a threat, at least at this tier. So that's kind of prototypical how I'd recommend using these torps. Again, with the sloppy play you typically see at low tiers, yes, you can just shoot in at a battleship in open water and dodge his one salvo before he can, that he can launch while trying to defend himself and then torp him close range. But now we're kind of tied up in terms of ships, in terms of competition or composition, and I think the enemy team has a lot more health. They just killed the guy that was attempting to cap, so the advantage is going their way. We're going to be shooting HE here. We could potentially be shooting the AP. I think we get a nice AP salvo on this Doogie here in a minute, but the HE is kind of the more reliable shell, and just long range, you can see on the map we're trying to keep him at the max range here. That way, if he changes his attention to us, starts focusing, we can just kind of sail away and disengage, and we'll disappear very quickly. That's the way to defend yourself when you're not relying on your concealment and you're shooting your guns a lot. Just keep them at long range, and that way, if the situation gets hot, you can just get out of there. Now we do have a nearly full health cruiser here. What I would want him to do is position himself behind those islands. Then I could sail to the left to the northwest and spot for this guy while he shoots undetected. But he's charging in pretty rapidly. Let's see, 1 ship versus 3. Do the math on that. Let me know what you think. But I kind of need him to spot, or he needs me to spot. But it's just unfortunately not going to unwind that way. So I'm trying to kind of maintain this island here to potentially protect myself. I'm trying to tell him to get back. We need him alive in this situation. It's going to be relatively hard for me to carry on as a solo on this. It's not impossible, but much more difficult. Here we have the Doogie coming back around again, and we're going to fire that HE that we had loaded. And I think in this next salvo we'll switch over to AP. And you can see here, this next salvo, as our ship dies, we no longer have access to the shop because he's not getting spotted anymore. But we do get a couple of juicy citadels there. So unfortunately, due to that ship rushing in broadside to 3 targets, we lost our spotter, and we weren't able to continue that salvo. Here we still do have the AP loaded against the Iwaki, and here this is kind of a red flag for me on the effectiveness of this AP. Iwaki's not exactly a heavily armored behemoth, and yet we're mostly going to get shatters and bounces here on this thing. We're not really doing any damage. Had I been shooting HE the entire time on this, we would have actually killed him, but I'm primarily just testing the shells in this game. So unfortunate that, you know, this is a level 8 or a 11 point build on Gurren. Not the highest level build that you can get, but that's pretty serviceable, and we have 2 perks dedicated to him. Gurren's base trait and his perk slot 3 both have AP penetration enhancers, and the fact that we can't deal damage to that Iwaki, even though it's a long range shot, that's a bit of an issue. So again, just another point in Troob's favor in my opinion. But now we're going to be kiting away. Kiting away, if you're not familiar with the term, means we're sailing away trying to get these ships to chase us. You're always going to have the advantage in that situation. It's a lot harder to hit a ship that's sailing away from you than towards you, due to the fact that the shells have to travel farther. They're typically steeply angled away from you, and so on and so forth. So had these ships continued to chase us, we would have probably been able to burn them down, but they're kind of disengaging. So I'm trying to, you know, time's becoming a bit of an issue, so I'm thinking about cycling back towards them. But now we're running into issues with this island, and I'm trying to just disengage here, let the situation reset. But we're going to have the Clemson pop up here. And this is kind of the classic American gunboat versus the new Russian Soviet gunboat philosophy. Ideally, we'd like to keep him at long range as best as possible and just use our advantages with the ballistics that way. USN destroyers, especially low tier, very floaty, slow moving shells. So again, we'd have the advantage in that situation. The thinking here is, though, we got to kill the Clemson quickly and then get back on those cruisers. They could very easily sail away and just win the game on time. So due to that situation, we're going to make a major mistake here. We're going to attempt to torp this Clemson. 2 reasons I don't want to do it. Number 1, torping a destroyer close range is always a bad play, and this is the best demonstration that I've had on video in my gameplay for a long time. So hopefully you guys take this to heart. Use your guns, but this ship has very quick reload. I kind of had the mentality that the Adhotnik, where it had about a 10-second reload. You could fire that and then launch the torps very quickly. Whether you're trying to actually hit the destroyer or not doesn't really matter. You're just getting them in the water to distract. Then by the time the guns are reloaded, you're back on the gun view. No need to do that here. We got a 4.9 second reload, very quick reload, actually faster than the Clemson. So had I stuck with the guns here and played this properly, we actually probably would have killed this Clemson and won this fight and potentially won the game. But major mistake there, and you can see we're missing opportunities. He does have support, so we need to kill him very quickly. Potentially would have gotten unspotted, although the cruiser was poking through to spot us as well. Anyway, that's a look at the Izzy for you. Hope you guys did enjoy it. If you did, please hit the thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, you should consider subscribing. There's a lot of World of Warships coming all the time. Questions, comments, let me know how the Russians are treating you so far. And we'll see y'all later. Alright, peace.